What's going on, folks? Welcome back to Bev Boys, your one-stop shop for all your energy drink reviews and performance talks. I'm Christian,
Brian.
and we are the Bev Boys. Good take two there. We may or may not have botched the first one, but we here
Terribly.
now. Um, got another banger for you as usual. Rocking just the two of us today, no guests, but that's all good. We got some good topics lined up for you. Um, I'm trying a new energy drink I haven't tried before. Brian's got something up his sleeve as well, so. Let's just roll right into it. What do you got for us, Brian? Or do you want me to go first?
Why don't you go first? I want to see what you got. You were
Okay.
hyping it up, so
Yeah. So nothing that people don't know of, but I haven't tried this one. It's a little bit um, outside of what I would normally get, and it is a tropical edition Red Bull. So this is full gas, full diesel here, matching Brian's shirt. Uh, but yeah, so Red Bull, the tropical edition. It's just tropical flavor, vibrant yellow can. It's full sugar, so I usually don't do this. That's hilarious. I usually don't do this. The only one I've really tried that's full sugar is that
we did
cinnamon pear one that we
which
tried.
was really good.
Yeah, which
I
was gas. So
I'm not
I
usually
mean,
a
I'm
girl like this. I'm not usually this kind of girl.
exactly like that's exactly how I feel with this energy drink. So maybe I'll go to the dark side. But yeah, full gas here. As you know, as you know, Red Bull, not a ton of caffeine, less than 100 milligrams. Um, this bad boy has, what is it, 116 calories, all from sugar, just 28 grams of straight sugar, some miscellaneous B vitamins in there. But so it better taste good with all that sugar there. But yeah, I'm excited for this one.
What's interesting about before I get into mine, what's interesting about like sugars in an energy drink that's a little bit lower caffeine is you can almost kind of associate that with like this is a more performance-based energy drink for someone who's probably like maybe endurance running, where you're like, I need a little bit of a caffeine, but I want like the simple sugars to kind of get going, or like pre like competition activity. Like it's really
Right.
I think it's like how you frame it. It's not inherently like weaker or bad energy drink. The price is a little bit much for me, but you're about to do like a hard workout or something. You need some carbohydrates. You need a little bit of caffeine. That might be like a good source. But that's just neither here nor there. I think it's just like a frame of reference. We can probably touch on that. I have an interesting one. I went no caffeine today, which
Wow.
for
Are you feeling okay?
so like I mean I do have a nice coffee,
Okay. Glad to
but
know
for
you're
all
all right.
yeah, for all the listeners, I mean, we know like I'm the caffeine fiend, but so Cadence is an electrolyte drink. What's really cool is they did a collaboration with Raw um, on their Core 500 drink. So I have it right here, just pure silver can with like white kind of logos on there. It
Wow.
looks sick. It looks super sick. And I think the Raw collaboration helps like bring like some of that branding over to it of like how Chris Bumstead and how like Raw Nutrition wants to do things. What's really neat about it though, 12-ounce can. Um, so it's just going over like the key ingredients. The electrolytes are a blend, so you get 500 milligrams of sodium, pretty good amount of sodium. I'm more so on the 1,000, but like 500 for this is probably good. 190 milligrams of potassium and 30 milligrams of magnesium. Um, just kind of going over those ingredients, right? Magnesium is like a double-edged sword because it's going to facilitate like the necessary electrolyte balance when it comes to electrolytes and proper cellular like water distribution. So having like 30 milligrams of magnesium in there, I think is pretty good. That's going to end up only being like 8% of like your daily intake, but in all reality, it's probably a good thing. The other aspect of this is like, say you drink this like to hydrate before bed, that magnesium is going to essentially uncover, like for layman's terms, the flap that allows like your adenosine receptors to allow you to feel tired. So this could work in some cool different ways. It's not enough to like make you feel tired pre-workout, especially if you're drinking some caffeine or anything like that. But it could be a cool thing to do. Whereas potassium, obviously, that's going to be like your normal cellular fluid balance, like how much is inside the cell, how much is outside the cell, and then it's also going to stimulate your nerve impulse and your muscular contractions. And then sodium, we all know sodium is like the most basic, most necessary one. Simply put, you want muscles to contract, you need sodium, you need those ions inside of your muscular tissue for that to occur. What's really cool about this, though, is on the can, and I've never seen this before, other than like maybe like you see on like a pre-workout or like an intro workout kind of thing, not in like a ready to drink. They have a fuel guide on the actual side of the can, and it tells you like when you're taking it and then like the objective of why you would take it at that time, right? Upon waking, replenish electrolytes lost while sleeping, you know, going to bed, reinstate electrolytes that you might lose while you sleep, and then post training, replenish electrolytes while training. It's very simple, honestly, but like it's kind of cool that they like threw that on there. Um, the biggest thing is like it's zero sugar, zero calories. It's a little bit. It's supposed to be framed as like a little bit lighter than like the Element ones, which I love the Element packs. I think the ready to drinks kind of miss with like some of the sparkling aspect. It almost like makes it just like a salty sparkling water. But I got the watermelon mojito flavor, so I'm pretty hyped. Like this might be. I feel like it's not going to be okay. It's either going to be a banger or it's going to be not a banger.
Trash.
Yeah, like it's either gas or it's trash, and we know that rule. We've seen it 1,000 times before on our show. Pricing wise, like I think it was like 279. Like it's a little bit more expensive than if you were to just buy electrolyte powder, obviously. But for a ready to drink can, like you can get a 12 pack for like $30. Um, so if you're big on the RTD aspect, fairly priced. I think the Element packs are like 40 for a 12 pack. Obviously, you get a
Yeah.
little bit more of like a 16-ounce can, and it's 1,000 milligrams of sodium. But I'm excited. Should we pop these tops?
Dude, let's do it. I'm pumped. Let's pop them. If I can get my finger under it. Pause. Okay. Subtle.
I had a nice one. First smell. This would go great with some rum on a beach. Like I feel like you should be drinking this one.
Yeah. Well, this tropical flavor is like,
I haven't had the tropical in years. I think it's like a pineapple kind of like a punch.
yeah, I'm getting like pineapple mango type of deal.
This smells fantastic.
Yeah, that is like pineapple and a little bit of mango. What I like about it is you don't, because I felt like with the watermelon one, you got a little bit of that like actual like Red Bull taste, which is
Mhm.
fine. But like if I want that, I'll just get the regular Red Bull. This one is like purely just like tropical.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you right now, this tastes like a mixed drink with salt on the rim. Like maybe not quite margarita, like true like you get the little hint of mint, got like your initial flavors like watermelon and then you get like some mint and lime and then salt on the rim. Like that's what it tastes like.
Wow.
This is I mean,
I've never had a mojito, but that sounds about like a mojito would taste like.
the watermelon is nice too. It's like do you ever put like tahini or like salt a watermelon?
Yeah. Yep.
That's what it kind of is like with like some mojito flavor in the background.
Mm,
I would like a little bit more of the mint, but I could see why they maybe didn't do it because it might overpower.
yeah. You got to
But
be
you
careful
definitely
with the mint.
Yeah, but you definitely taste some of the lime on the back end. This is now for transparency's sake, I feel like we have to grade like hydration drinks differently than energy drinks, right?
Yeah, they're not the same.
Yeah. And I think I gave the ghost energy like hydration drink. I think I gave that like a 7.4 just because it was a really sweet
Yeah,
when
I
I did
remember
that.
that.
This is I mean, I'm pretty wowed. The can looks sick. The price was pretty good. It was cheaper than the Ghost hydration. I'm really like the raw logo just has been growing on me. Like that simplistic, like really sleek, bolded like letters. The only thing that kind of knocks it down is I'm not a huge fan of like Cadence's logo. It kind of reminds me of like Comic Sans.
Yeah, that's pretty bland. That's pretty salad.
It or
Um,
like Bloom, is that like the supplement brand that you can get at like
Yeah,
Target? It reminds me of like that lettering, but like they redo that. This can might be damn near perfect. Very
yeah.
very simple.
I like the look of that can. It's like a better version of like that Focus drink, which the drink was also trash.
Was it?
Um,
Yeah, dude. That was
the drink was
terrible.
horrible. But I like that chrome look. I
Yeah.
like the Red Bull cans too, like especially like when they do the tropical
Yes.
flavors and like just like the seasonal flavors.
Yeah. And when I was going through this, and I was like, I had two cans ready for us, which you don't know this, but we've talked about like Ghost released like their peach flavor energy drink. But when they released that peach flavor, they've also changed something that we have talked about hating on their cans.
No, no heat seal.
No heat seal. The cans are
Oh boy.
the cans are now printed themselves, and they look fantastic. I saw it because they had the Strabango release, not the Strabango Margarita, but Strabango is like I think it's a Circle K and Walmart exclusive now. That's fantastic. But I saw the can, I was like, this is weird. Like it's different. It's like the whole can. I was like, there's no print. Then I saw that they did a release out there of like that was their number one complaint. Like we were with everybody on that, is
Wow.
they didn't like the heat seal. So now they have the cans, and there's still like a small indentation on the cans to kind of give some texture, but the cans themselves are printed. So no more heat seal, no more little kind of cut on the lip, nothing. The one thing that we had as a complaint,
That's elite.
man, now just make it like $1.
Yeah, I was just do that Dr. Pepper collab.
Yeah,
So
and
is it
that's the
similar
thing.
to like a monster can then in that sense?
Yeah, it really is. It's very similar to a monster can and how they made that. And I think that may be because a lot of their distribution happens with Anheuser-Busch. Um, I think, and I could be wrong. So Monster is also distributed through Anheuser-Busch. So they may have moved their canning facility over to like where Monster does it, which then inherently will give you the more printed cans, the more high quality cans themselves without having to have the heat seal film. I hope that this kind of changes the industry and you see really, really good brands like Gorilla Mind move forward and do the same thing as they start to get kind of like outwards and get a bigger distribution network. Because Gorilla Mind's another one of those ones where it's a damn near perfect drink other than Tiger's Blood. But the only thing that holds it back sometimes is like sometimes the heat seal doesn't always like work the way you want it to, and then you got like a little lip on there that is kind of annoying to drink with. Um, but it was super sick to see. So I'm pretty happy about that. And nothing else changed. Like the quality is still good. The ingredients are still fantastic. Flavor, everything was there. It was just like, can we make the can a little better? And they went out and they did it. But the first topic I kind of want to talk about, like while we sip on these, and I love this. The flavor is so good. Like if I'm choosing between a pop and this, like I'm probably taking this. Zero sugar, zero calories, and there's some electrolytes in there. But the question I got for you is like it are hydration drinks truly necessary?
Yeah, that's a good question. This reminds me of a discussion I was having the other night. One of my like bosses was here this week down in DR, so that was really nice. And somehow the topic came up of like there's a book that I've read. It's called Estrogeneration. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically about like how everything makes you like your skin absorbs everything and makes you produce less testosterone and more estrogen, this and that, you know, plastics, all that tinfoil hat type of stuff, so to say.
It's because the government's watching us every day,
Right,
24/7. They're following me.
exactly. Basically, we asked the question like, do you think that stuff really matters? And the summary was thinking about like worrying about being low T is low T. So like if you're worried about that being low T, like you probably are low T,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of stuff that has a lot bigger impact on that than any of those other things like
Your
sleep.
sleep, your
Do you
height,
actually train? Do you exercise? Do you eat halfway decent? Are
if
you
you cut,
just high T? Like do you do stuff that's high T? Um
like it's a cliche, but it's true. Like
it is. It is. And it's like good luck taking care of all that. Good luck living modern life without being exposed to, EMFs, all that. Like, good luck not having
Microplastics.
to use a fucking computer.
Yeah.
Good luck not having to use a cell phone. Good luck not, like,
Consuming a microplastic because
right.
something will have it on there. Like,
Exactly. Like, good luck eating. Yeah, like, unless you want to just move off the grid and
never touch anything.
completely. Exactly. Like, that's the only. So, this is kind of that reminds me of this. The electrolyte drinks and the hydration drinks are popular. It started with Gatorade back in whatever with the Florida football team. I can't remember what decade that was, the
76 or
70s
81 or
or
something like that.
80s, something like that. And now they've kind of evolved to like, okay, it's less sugar. Now it's more so like, okay, what are the ratios between like the sodium, the magnesium, the potassium, all that good stuff with players like Element, Drip Drop, Liquid IV, Salt Stick, all those types of brands.
Hmm.
Um, Short answer, no, they're definitely not necessary. Like if you do the big rocks, that's going to take care of 90, probably 99% of your stuff. Do you sleep well? Do you eat reasonably? Um, are you training? Yes, at some point. Like if you're most people aren't going to get like a sweat analysis done, but like there's some people that you can just tell like they sweat more than other people. They're probably going to need more electrolytes, or if you train more than other people, or if you live in like a hot climate where you're going to sweat more and lose more electrolytes, you're going to need to replace more of those. And you can do that through salting your food and eating more foods that have, potassium and magnesium and all that type of stuff. Or, sometimes a quick fix is to get like a hydration drink to pick up like, the element packs, or, people do Gatorade Zero. Um, some of them are
Warmups.
interesting because I feel like Gatorade is like not as much like there's a lot less sodium and a lot more just like sugar.
Hmm.
Um, to me, that's just like a carb drink, like an intra workout like carb drink. And then there's also the discussion about like what is like because I mean the optimal ratio of the electrolytes is going to be different for everybody,
Yeah.
and
Based
like
off of how they
is
sweat.
exactly so like that makes it tough for companies because some people say, "Oh, our formula is scientifically formulated. This is like the right ratio." And
For
people like to
who?
talk about exactly, and people like to talk about electrolyte balance. Is it balanced to have a element pack and just red line on gram of sodium? For some people, maybe if they're in in like a sodium deficit, so to say.
Hmm.
But for some people that like don't need that, maybe not. Maybe that's throwing you more out of balance than you think it is getting you in balance. So
And then you're going to retain a ton more water. And then depending on what your goals are, you might push yourself further away from the goal.
right. And like I'm a fan. Like I like the element packs. Like the that's probably my favorite type of supplement or favorite type of like
Hydration.
electrolyte. I like the saltiness. The flavor's good and there's no sugar. Um, I've had liquid IV. I've had drip drop. Those are all right too. Good, less sodium, a little more sugar. I think they're probably better for people that are like during like exercise and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my take. Definitely not necessary. I think with certain lifestyle factors, like people are just not, they might eat healthy, but they may not get all of, if you eat the same foods most of the time, you have a consistent diet, but you probably are deficient in something like you're going to be missing, one of those electrolytes or some other type of vitamin. Those can be helpful. Um, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people think they need all this stuff and end up spending a lot of money and kind of like overthinking it instead of just like trying to do the big rocks really well, which is tough, especially with like modern lifestyle, like I just said. But
Hmm.
I don't know. What are your takes on it?
There's kind of two pieces. So the first one is like I think like a hydration supplement is exactly that. Like I think people really lose focus on they're like, oh, I need a hydration. It's like it's a hydration supplement. It's supposed to supplement the lifestyle. Like you have, like you said, like you got to take care of your big rocks. Are you eating right? You can probably salt your food just a little bit more, and it's going to cost you $3 a month to get an extra thing of salt. You know, are you eating enough almonds to get a little bit more magnesium just to benefit yourself? Are you getting the potassium from like fruits or other vegetables? Are you working through the things that you should be doing anyway instead of just spending the extra $50 on this? Now, If you are, and those are great, and it's like, well, you still feel like you may need a little bit more hydration, then you can get the supplement on top of that, right? But those things have to occur first. You can't. It's the same reason of like people, instead of eating a little bit less, they go buy a fat burner, right? And I'm going to put that in quotations. Or instead of trying to go to bed earlier, maybe getting off their phone, doing some blackout curtains, the simple things, they want to take 25 milligrams of melatonin, which is a cortisol inducing supplement, which might lead to some weight gain because you fucking stack it so much on your daily habits. Or are they eating enough protein within their meals and they're not focusing on that? And instead, they go buy Pop Tarts and a protein shake, and they're like, well, this is balanced. It's all my macros. Well, you're missing all the micronutrients and you're not necessarily eating whole foods. And I don't mean to be the, hey, only eat whole foods, do a paleo, be carnivore, that kind of guy. But like, you should have a balanced diet that you can get a lot of your vitamins, even if you don't get them all. If you get a lot of your vitamins and micronutrients, as well as your macronutrients in a balanced way from as many whole food sources as possible, that's when you start to look into adding on these secondary aspects. Now, one thing that you said was like the Gatorade, and that really made like a point to me where it's like, what's the ratio of like how much carbs and how much like actual electrolytes are in there? It's labeled as like an electrolyte or sports drink. It's really, like you said, it's an intra workout carb source that has some electrolytes in it. And that's just, it reminds me of like the old time argument of like peanut butter has proteins. Like peanut butter does have 7 grams of protein, but it's 16 grams of fat. Like it's a
Yeah, that's a
fat
fat
source.
source. That's not a protein
Yeah,
source.
it's a fat source that has some protein. Like you have to understand that people need to be a little bit more informed on like even just the nutrition label or the supplemental facts on what's on the back end of the bottle or the can or the container that they're eating. And we often get confused based on marketing versus what is the actual makeup and idea behind this, right? So I think number one, people need to be more informed on what they're consuming. That's like a number one thing. And I think in America, at least, like we missed the boat on that a lot. And they're like, well, you're eating meat, so it's protein. It's like, yeah, but you're eating 60-40 ground chuck. It's 38 grams of fat and 15 grams of protein. You're eating a fat source. Um, and then the other aspect would be like, you got it, like you said, you got to take care of your big rocks. You need to hammer home like your everyday nutrition before we start to add in extra things that might be either costly or just maybe not even essential because you're then at least getting that amount that you would have drank in a 12-ounce can. You're consuming that throughout the day in maybe not one foul shot and overloading and like dropping a bunch in the system at one time and flooding it, but you're breaking it up in a sporadic kind of aspect over 3-4 meals a day. You're rounding it out, you feel more full, and then because you didn't drink that can, maybe you're consuming more other micronutrients that might be more important. Like if you're doing potassium, you can get some good carbs from like a banana. You can start to get other micronutrients from there. um, so I think that's just one of those big things that we end up missing the boat on. We always look for a quick fix and a silver bullet versus um, the long, hard way of doing things.
Yeah, it's almost like I'm not gonna say it's too late by the time like you've neglected all that stuff and just think taking a liquid IV is gonna solve your problems before your practice or game. But like, give me the person that's like taking care of that stuff on a consistent basis, and they're not even gonna need that
Mm-hmm.
and not have to rely on that like when the time comes.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, there's probably some. It's one of those things where I don't know if having more electrolytes necessarily gives you like above like where your balance should be gives you a benefit, but not having enough will pose a detriment. And there's a lot of that stuff that gets overlooked because one of the big reasons supplements are super popular and people want to jump to those before looking at other more simple things is when you don't take a supplement, you probably don't realize a difference, and then you take the supplement and all of a sudden you feel something different.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like with food and like ingesting like vitamins in particular, yeah, like having an excess amount of them isn't going to provide like a super great benefit. And in fact, there's probably even like a toxicity level to most of them. There is. But when you're deficient in them, that's when you start running into problems. They're more so of protecting from the downside as opposed to pursuing the upside, to give kind of a Nassim Taleb analogy there. And that's just not as sexy. So I think
It's it's
the
really
consistent
sexy
stuff
to
is what matters.
yeah, but like you said, it's really sexy to like, oh, I take protein, I take, vitamin D and then vitamin K every single day, and then I do this and I do this, and it's like,
It's
all
like you
right,
can
but
do that without taking supplements. If like
but how many
some of
carrots?
it's tough, but
Yeah, but
like
like
the
how many
vitamin D
carrots
can
do you
get
eat?
tough. But yeah, it's like I don't know.
And then you can
It's
feel a little bit fuller, and you'll probably eat less garbage if you had some more whole foods of like vegetables.
right, exactly. So
And then even at the very least, you could spend less on those because you can supplement them as needed versus relying on them as the primary source.
100%.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really about all I have to say about that. Like people, I'm not against them. Like I said, like I like
I take them.
having, yeah, like I take them sometimes. They're sick. I like them, but if you're not looking to spend a lot of money, you can get all those benefits by just taking care of your diet, sleep, drinking water, and the like. So,
Yeah.
as Brian just crushed his hydration drink.
Yeah, as I'm crushing, dude, it tastes so good. If I'll say this though, if you're looking to like go get yourself, say a Mountain Dew or this, at this point, a Mountain Dew probably costs as much as this in a bottle. Get this.
Yeah,
Like, obviously, don't just crush high like sodium and everything because again, retain water. You might oversaturate and then we have that imbalance. But like, if you're looking to feel a little dirty, you want to be a little dirty person. Instead of getting the 70 grams of sugar and kind of garbage that's in like a Mountain Dew, like you can grab one of these for the same price. I think it tastes great, and it tastes a little bit more natural than if you were to drink like a soda or a pop. So there is that. Um, if you're choosing one or the other as a addition to your day, go with this. But I wouldn't say neglect uh, your other aspects prior to this, and think of it as quote unquote literally a silver bullet.
yes.
Yeah.
Or you could be like me and get a one with caffeine and a bunch of sugar. Feels like completely opposite, but it also
Uh,
tastes good.
which is that really a bad thing?
Sometimes you got to live a little, brother.
Get dirty on them.
Exactly. And with that, we will go to our next topic. So, one question I like to ask, kind of, I mean, this is just like one of those questions I think it's good to ask people who, especially that have been in the field longer than you, which for me is pretty much everybody that I know. Um, what do you think is quote unquote the future of like performance S&C? What skills in particular do you think will start to separate like good coaches from great coaches? And have you seen that change at all since you first got into the field?
When I first got in, the entire field was completely accentuated around strength. Um, and we like where I had interned. Shout out CSP, Marshall Gang boys, but like those guys were like considered the oddballs for like looking at, and this was 5 6 years ago. They were looking at what a lot of the field is doing now. Let's prioritize some field work. Let's prioritize the explosive stuff. Obviously, don't neglect the strength training, but the strength training goes to push those aspects forward. So with that being said, that's where it was. I think now I was basically fostered in this kind of environment of where it is now. I think where I see the field kind of going a little bit awry is that number one, it's cyclical. So I think we're going to come back around and it's going to be what it was 5 10 years ago. And everyone's going to present it as a different idea. They're going to dress the pig up and say it's new and it's a woman. And instead, it's just going to be the same pig with a dress on it. And those who can decipher that are going to be the ones that thrive. And I think that's one of those big skills is like, can you decipher the information and not get too caught up in stuff that may be flashy, like being like truly individualistic critical thinkers. I think those coaches are going to be the ones that survive and advance. With that, I think the other thing that is really there is the coaches that use tech to supplement what they do and not get too caught up in the tech itself. That's where I see a lot of the problems going wrong. And we've had two guests prior to us really mention that, and seeing the same thing was, TK and Alex of, they're forgetting the stuff that got you to get those results in using the tech. Um, and then finally, I think the number one skill that I think coaches aren't learning as much, and I think it's a lot of like internships kind of fail this, which I try to emphasize a lot with ours, is like coaching, like actually coaching. Anyone can write a program and say, here, go do the program. But, you know, a, a bad program can be coached really well and you'll get better results than a good program that you handed the card to them and you said, go for it. Having those interpersonal skills, really understanding the athletes and knowing when to pivot, how to pivot, because you have that understanding as a coach and can see something that's not quite right or that there's something that you can do better, making that change on the fly, like being in the room and being present where you're at, and really catering, whether it's changing from a barbell squat to a safety bar squat, those like, and that's just a small example, but like making those small changes, or like a foot position, or how you even cue something to make an athlete better understand, that skill is going to be the one that translates and carries it over yonder, 15, 20, 100 years from now. Every good coach that we idealize and look after, whether it be, Jim Wendler, Louis Simmons, Dan Paff, all the way, Charlie Francis, Verkashansky, they were all geniuses, right? But one thing that they could really do, and a lot of stuff that you'll see, is how they communicated to athletes. Buddy Morris. Some of these guys are a little bit more rough around the edges and they swear a little bit more. Some of them are more family oriented men. Like Dan Paff looks like he'd be a great like dad or grandfather to anybody that shows up, and he's like a father figure. Whereas Louis Simmons is probably going to sit there, motherfuck somebody, and try to fight him in between sets in the rack. One thing they could always do, and one thing that they all have in common, is they are critical thinkers that apply a good knowledge of the athlete and that athlete model and shift the training to get the same adaptation, but in a better way just for that person, right? That's a skill that is not taught. And these guys know how to do it, right? Again, example, Louis Simmons, he wasn't dealing with, I don't want to, like, I'm not going to say powerlifters aren't elite athletes, but he's not dealing with, you know, quote unquote, like the stereotypical professional athlete. He was dealing with guys at 5 a.m. that didn't have a job, maybe had a substance abuse problem at some point, and they were looking for their second chance at Westside Barbell. What was the environment that they thrived in? Chaos, conflict, altercations. Like they wanted to be pushed and they needed something extreme to push them. He was that type of guy. And so he said, well, that's the environment that we do here. You're going to get really good, but you're going to do it how you like where you're supposed to be, you know, Path and eccentric genius. But what he could do really well is he would basically, in a sport like track and field, everything is fast, 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 fast. Dan Paff talks like Matthew McConaughey. He's very slow, very structured, and very like dialed in on how he's going to say something to focus the attention and bring that energy back down to like really be the opposite, right? And it's can you use that skill to really like cater to that athlete? That's my opinion. What do you think? Is there something different?
Yeah, no, I love that. I especially agree with the actually still coaching part. There's In my current job, there's a lot of stuff that looks different from when I was at Elon just because like the resources are different. Like I utilize a lot more sports science now, collect a lot more data more rigorously, and I think that's all great. But from like day one and up until now, and I think this will continue, the most important thing to me is like the on floor coaching or the on field coaching. Like that's what, like, yeah, there's some times where it's like we need to do CMJ tests and I'm just doing CMJ tests for 20 minutes straight and we have another coach on the floor. But to me, like the most important thing other than that is like that development that shows up in a test doesn't happen without the coaching. So just to kind of reiterate that point there, I think the critical thinking is going to be huge. Um, a lot of people tend to just, and I think it's good at first. Like when you first start off as an intern, you don't know shit. I mean, not that we know shit now, but you really don't know shit at that point. It's easy to just kind of accept whatever the person who's in charge, what they say is gospel.
Hmm.
And it's probably good because at that point, more than likely, they got in that position because they at least have a good amount of knowledge. But as you go further on, like the ability to kind of challenge the way those people think, even if they were someone that like you really got a lot out of, but like actually form your own beliefs instead of just looking at the sexy thing and not being afraid to be like, hey, that actually looks a little funny to me, and it's I think it's kind of wrong. And then not just say, okay, this is wrong. Look into that and actually figure out if you're right or wrong. Like stress testing your own beliefs, um, questioning all your beliefs, stuff like that. Easy for people to, ask a question about and talk about, force velocity curves. Much more difficult, and a lot less people are going to be willing to actually pick up like a physics textbook and kind of figure out what the force velocity curve actually might mean and where people could be missing the boat or could be, right about it in this regard, but wrong about it in this regard. That's just an example. Um, so I think that's going to be huge. I think overall, I think the field is trending in the right direction as in regards to strength coaches are starting to get a little more respect from skill coaches. It's sometimes it's still not there, but like you're not just the weights guy at a lot of places now. Some places you still are, but I think being able to have a greater influence as far as like, okay, yeah, primarily we're going to get them physically prepared within the field and in the weight room, but we also probably have a better idea of how to structure practice plans in a way that's advantageous to set us up for being in the best position to win on game day, stuff like
Hmm.
that. Um, just having influence on things that are going to make you more valuable and make you tougher to replace. I think like in the pro sector, from what I'm seeing now, in baseball, scouting, it's so big. In pro sports, it's so big. Like scouting guys that you're going to draft, or you're going to sign is huge, especially with baseball. You're trying to predict if this 15-year-old kid, what are his chances of providing you big league value to your organization? How the hell are you supposed to figure that out? It's really tough, and there's no certain way to like know, like, oh yeah, this is the guy, 100% chance. But like, I think they're in the next. You're starting to see teams that have scouting, and then they have performance scouting. Someone with an S&C background that is going to do certain, whether it's anthropometrics, force plate tests, that's kind of be able to help enhance the clarity of those projections. So I think that's another way is just being able to expand influence beyond S&C to as many departments as possible. Like I know we're really the generalists, but like is there anything that we can do in training that's going to enhance like skill acquisition? Um, Maybe yes, maybe not. But I think you're seeing it too with like college. People are getting that assistant AD role, becoming more like administrative, um, just integrating themselves into as many different parts as possible, not just within the walls of the weight room. Seeing it too with that high performance director title, people are overseeing both strength and medical. So you're overseeing people, athletic training, physical therapy, nutrition. Um, So I think that's obviously going to be big. Like obviously just having more influence in general is going to allow you to be more valuable and tougher to replace. As far as like certain skills, I'm interested to see this could go one of two ways with all the sports science stuff. Like I think right now you got your people that are more in the coaching side, and then at the high levels you got people that are more in the sports science side. Okay, these people are really tactical, know how to coach on the floor, and then you got these other people that are really good with numbers. They may know how to code. Is that going to become one? Like, are you going to be able to need to know how to run Python and R and stuff like this? I don't know if it's going to be that like in depth, like actually knowing how to write the code, but like I think there's going to be an enhanced expectation of like knowing how to run statistical tests, especially if you're at a school and you're trying to perform at a high level, but you don't have a whole big staff of, sports scientists or, another academic department that can run that for you. I think
where
that's
you
going to
have enough to
be
get by.
exactly like you're going to have enough to get by. That's probably going to be a little bit more than what you're going to get from school, which,
Yeah.
yeah, which I think all at the end comes down to like people that are willing to continue to learn like further and further on into their career and not just like keep reading like the same stuff, like the new books that come out. Oh yeah, I'll read that. I'm still learning, but like looking into stuff that like is really outside of what other people think of and aren't as comfortable with trying to learn. That can obviously be a separator. So I don't know. My mind goes in a lot of different directions. It'll be really interesting to see what it looks like in like 5 to 10 years, though, from that aspect.
I think you're right, like especially in the aspect of like, are you doing the stuff where it's not necessarily the confines of your job? Like it's really easy for us to grab a book and be like, what's the new set and rep scheme at what percentage and what's this going to be the next thing? To where it's like, how do you expand the knowledge outside of like the basics of like your four walls, which like some of these aren't necessarily basics, but like you said for coding, right? That's not necessarily a strength coach's like true requirement for a job. But if you have that ability and you can add like value into like the sports science department while you do the other stuff, that makes you a more valuable person. That makes like you the next generation that can essentially unseat like someone who's been in that position for a while that may not be as good, because as athletics and as sports like start to get more and more data driven, as well as like higher level athletes, and now with the game at least, like there's really no amateurism in college. Even high schoolers are getting NIL deals just to look forward to the next level. And then you have the pro section where it's already paid and there's all this stuff. Like the stakes are higher. They're going to want more output from those in supportive roles to make sure that those stakes, it's all going to go towards like a pro style like organization at some point, I think. And that's where it's going to end up having to be, to where you have to pay for that. But when you pay for that, like they're expecting some sort of level of output to where the mediocrity and that kind of thing might not be able to fly by anymore, because it's going to matter. And people are who are paying to like have this stuff, they're going to say, well, we're paying, we need an output. And if you can't support that, we're going to get someone who can. And I think those skill sets are what's going to be the next level driver, like you said, whether it
Right.
be business acumen, coding and data analytics kind of skill sets, whatever it might be. I think those things outside of the regular confines of the job and the people who have already started to expand their knowledge on that are going to become more valuable than others.
Yeah. And I mean, if you think about it, like you can make models that will ideally, think of just like simple, like acute to chronic ratios.
Mm-hmm.
The basis of that is how can you minimize time missed from injury? It's no different than like how can I maxim like if I run a company, how can I maximize the number of hours that how can I maximize productivity of my workers? The workers are the athletes. How can we minimize the time that they miss and maximize their productivity? And while good solid principles as far as training will probably get you a majority of the way there, so just like not getting people hurt, but that extra edge is probably going to be provided by data informed decisions, especially in the future, and it already is. It has been at the higher levels, so I
Yeah.
think that's huge.
And that those data informed decisions are essentially going to be your hydration supplement. You need to take care of your
Exactly.
principles first, and then you can sprinkle that in, and it's going to push you over the edge. I don't think we should put the cart before the horse to where the data becomes the main source of everything. But what it does is it provides an objective view of the anecdotal evidence that's already there, of like, we think people who are more structurally sound and a little bit more robust as athletes will be injured less. That we can make that argument. I think it's already there that you can make that argument. But now it's like we have the data to back it up, and that means that they can't miss training sessions. They have to keep continuing training through, even if it is through like an accumulation period when we're at a time where our performance might not be the best, because we're preparing that it's not going to be the best. And we can, like TK had mentioned a couple podcasts ago, like they kind of plan that in those waves throughout those weeks where it's like we know we have, like, we can't take games off, but we know we're not playing Bama this week, so this might be the week that we got to load them up, right? And the data is going to support that decision, but the decision was made because of the anecdotal evidence and the principles that they have set forth. And I think that's where a really good coach like that is probably going to strive in the more so probably in the near future than later. Like, I think this is going to happen quicker than people think.
Yeah, it moves fast. It moves really fast. So it'd be interesting,
Hmm.
man.
I got one for you. Speaking of data, speaking of planning, as performance coaches, one of our favorite things in the entire world, whether as soon as everybody kind of figures out a little bit past like the basics of the essentials of strength and conditioning from the NSCA, the next book a lot of people read are key concepts. And the number one thing that you see from key concepts, and you'll see this plastered everywhere, is the high low model. Is a high low model truly necessary? Does it work as well as it should? Like I want to dig into this one. I have a theory, but I want to hear your point first.
Do we look at the high low model as high and low is relative to each other, or is it just strictly based on these activities are high and these activities are low? Because that opens up a whole nother can of worms. And in in baseball, when you play every day could be a high day, theoretically. And at the end of the day, can't really give a shit about if you had a high day the day before if you're playing in the World Series. Now, nothing is ever going to work as perfect as you plan it, which is why we do planning in general. You know, if we come at it with a good plan, we'll probably get solid results. If we come at it with a great plan, we're going to get good results. And sometimes the plan just goes to shit. I think intuitively it makes sense that you can't just go balls to the wall every single day and expect to continue that or expect to not get hurt. But I also think, you know, a lot of times athletes will self regulate. Like if you just push them hard as they can day after day, like say you got to get by that third or fourth day of going super high intensity, their bodies are just probably not going to let them go as hard unless they, you know, can just be able to override that. So you're going to get a low day in there from that. I mean, there's people that use it and don't use it. I think I'm a fan of it because, you know, the planning aspect, it just makes sense. Like if you want to prioritize a couple 2 to 3 high intensity days, say based around sprinting, lower body lifting, heavy stuff like that, it makes sense to do that fresh. And like we already know all the reasons behind that. I think some people, but I think on the other hand, it can also be used as a bit of a crutch because sometimes during the season, especially depending on, you know, I'm looking at this like a baseball lens. When you play a lot of games, if you're playing multiple games a week, like successive days in a row, you can't not expose your body to like
Back to
multiple high
back.
days in a row and then expect to just not break off during the season. Football, it's a little different. Like, you know, the
It's
schedule
one
is
game.
one game a week. Yeah. Same thing with like college basketball. There's, you know what, 2 games a week. They're usually on the same 2 days of the week. Same thing with soccer. But when you get into sports with higher frequencies, I think you have to, in training, expose people to multiple high intensity days in a row and then more than just 2 to 3 high days a week. And
Hmm.
going back to my first point, if you have a high day and then like, are they relative to one another? Like you could say, oh, like we had 3 high days in a row because we did some sort of, the athlete ended up sprinting 3 days in a row. But one day is always going to be higher than the other. They're not. There's no way the days are going to be exactly the same. So do you look at it on a relative aspect, which is where having data and like GPS data in particular can be super useful. Using acute to chronic ratios. Okay, has this athlete experienced this type of workload within a day period, within a 2 day period? Okay, yes. All right, then they're probably okay to handle it. And then at the end of the day, like you said, if you're going to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. You got to take a little bit of risk. Like if you feel good all the time, you're detrained, as TK would say. So
Hmm.
I think it's useful, like in the planning stage. Like obviously, like we're not just going to be like, all right, we're going to do max V sprints and then upper body, and then tomorrow we're going to do lower body, or we're going to do lower body wreck our lower body and do tempos, and then the next day we're going to do upper body and max V sprints. Like there's people know like what order you should put that in, and it's not that. So what do you think about that?
I think you made there's a really good point that I was gonna make that you made, and I think like relative to the activity, like that's like your biggest piece of context for a high low day, right? You can't just you can in theory classify things as a high level activity and a low level activity. Sprinting is a high level activity, right? Upper body training in the weight room only is probably a low day, and tempo training or aerobic training is probably low because it's low central nervous system stressing. It's not a global stressor on the body, not necessarily a total hormonal response, and it probably and essentially promotes recovery because you can balance those hydrogen ions within this muscular system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In a sport with higher frequency competitions, I think there's and a little bit less planning. You have to take things into account, and I'm going to view this as a track and field lens, just because of my background, and I'm going to take that route, right? When you go to a conference meet or a large competition, what is the likelihood, if you're successful, you will race on back-to-back days? Probably high,
Yeah, damn near
almost
100%.
damn near 100%, right? What am I going to do? Pull you out of a final and say, nah, you sprinted yesterday, I can't do it. No, I want to win. Like, we're going to have to go back to back. But that can't be the first time that they experience that. Because if that is, we just shot ourselves in the foot and we're gonna have a bad day and nobody's gonna have fun, right? And then you think about training, right? For me right now, a lot of our meets are like on Fridays, which I hate. It sucks. I want them on Saturdays so I can get more out of my Thursday training because we sprint and we lift on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But I don't want to like necessarily just blow their psyche because they run a little slower. Um, so, but then it's like, what's like if we think relative, like maybe our max speed day is, super high over 60 meters, where above 90% of top speed, and that's really going to be central nervous system stressing. But we can also do ACell stuff under fatigue because we're probably, under 15 meters, maybe we're hitting 75% of our top end like max velocity, and it's a more muscular dominant action. So I can probably follow my max speed day up with like a little bit of like maybe block starts or sled pushes. And if I do the sled pushes the day after, they might have some soreness in them, but like I'm also slowing the limb speed down. So I'm not going to stress everybody as much. And I can still accomplish what I want to from like a technical aspect relative to, a 100-meter race or a 400-meter race. Some 10 to 15, 20-meter, 30-meter at most, probably. Maybe then that's probably stretching it, like sled pushes and some block starts, relatively low as long as I limit the volume on them, right? So, like, you can back up some high intensity training days and start to work your way through the accumulation and transmutation periods. And then maybe once or twice we have like two higher back to back days, as long as you're planning it, that, and you're kind of going through it. Um, I think through that lens, it truly is. It's still a high low model. But if you take a first glance at it and you go and you just look at like the activities, you're like, that's not high low. That's two back to back high days. Well, relative to the individual, they've seen enough volume, they've accumulated enough like actual like, contacts and high speed distance that it's not a high volume day. We backed up, say, a speed endurance 2 day where we're touching, for my long sprinters, they're over 300 meters in the rep, and the following day we're hitting a technical analysis day over one hurdle on a 400 hurdle, right? It's probably about 30 meters, but for them that's relatively low. I think we can do that, and it's not necessarily all out on the intensity. And for the 100-meter people, maybe we do speed endurance one, and you know it's up to 300 meters. Which, if they're running 200s, I don't see why I would go over that ever. But I can back that up with some 15-meter block starts and work technical analysis with long breaks and top it out at maybe 80 meters of total sprint distance. That's a low day, right? The volume's really, really low. Maybe it's a couple actions, six to eight reps. Like, it's not that much. That's low, right? Throw in some med ball training, and essentially it's the same thing as someone who might do like a Monday primer and do a Tuesday max speed session, right? We just flip flopped it, and maybe it's a tempo day on Monday or whatever it is. it still works. It pokes at the idea of you're going to have to repeat some high intensity actions, even if it is lower volume. And in the likelihood, unless it's a hyper, you know, Porsche Lamborghini kind of athlete, to where they're gonna, they're gonna run three races and they're gonna get into three finals, which that's more so an anomaly and an exception to the rule than it is the rule itself. It's probably gonna lay out like that to where they might, do 2 to 400 meters of an action in the prelims and probably see 1 to 400 in the finals. So those things are like have to be taken into account. I mean, unless they're in relays, but like those things have to be taken into account. You got to train for them. You have to prepare for them. So those high low things I think they're more so relative than they are an absolute. And the faster you become okay with that, the more training will make sense. And like you had mentioned, like if you're fresh mid season, we have a problem. And I had that conversation, the past couple of weeks here where it's like, I know you guys are feeling tired. We may not have put the best performance up, but like they don't know that we're going through a transmutation period because we're preparing for our kind of conference block here and getting ready for that last little bit of actualization. They just think, oh, I'm running slower. Yeah, but we're pushing a little bit over the threshold of where I wanted to be on all of our volumes. And unfortunately, in collegiate track and field at mid-major schools, like you don't get to say, hey, we're not going to run this meet. I want a 2 week training block. As a first year, sprints coach, they're going to be like, oh, you got to run these kids because we need to get meets in. And you just got to tell them like, hey, you're probably going to run a little slower today. Or you talk to them afterwards and be like, great, wash that day away. We used it as a training method. I just want to get some volume in. And I knew we weren't going to have stuff, but I didn't want to kill your psych before you walked out there. It's going to be better next week.
Yeah, I think it's always relative. It's either you're either prepared or unprepared.
Mm-hmm.
You can't look at the weekly schedule and have no other context and say it's good or bad. It's either you're prepared or unprepared. You're built up for that or you're not. And that's something that like we've been doing here that like at first I was like, oh, like with our weekly schedule, I'm like, this is going to end really badly because we were going to sprint on back-to-back days. And I'm like, oh man, this goes against everything that I was, taught, so
Taught.
to say, going back to accepting what you hear and taking it a little bit too literally. Um, and nothing bad happened. And we kept
Yeah.
doing it. And we're on field 6 days a week. And it's because we started slow and built the kids up over time. And now they can handle sprinting 4 days a week. And I
It's
think we
kind of,
overlook how resilient some people can be, especially like at the higher levels. Just because you can't
absolutely.
do it and you work your desk job and can't sprint 4 days a week doesn't mean that a 17-year-old kid whose job is to do this for a living can't do that.
USOB. That was going to be my point. That was going to be my point.
Exactly. So it's like, yo, like you can't treat your athletes like they're made of glass. Yeah, like
Yeah.
a reasonable progression, but like we've built up to okay, we can sprint 4 days a week. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like a lot, and then we do have to take a deload every once in a while, and we kind of play that by ear for the most part. Sometimes it'll be planned, but sometimes we'll kind of just look at the numbers where data can come in a little bit helpful. And you make adjustments there, going back to the coaching eye. If a guy looks like shit or they tell you that they feel like shit, probably be a little more conservative with them that day.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you write on the paper doesn't have to be done absolutely. Like you can make
Mm-hmm.
changes and be adaptable. You should make changes and be adaptable. So
God, I love that. That was a great one.
that was a good one, man.
People are going to be pissed off at it, but I'm all right with that.
Hey, man. It's,
If that upsets you, comment and definitely subscribe to us so you can yell at us on the next video.
yeah, we should have a call-in show with people. Yeah. Okay. I got a few left. Let me try to pick which one I think is going to be good. Let's talk about warm-ups. So this is going to be one that I think has been circulating, especially within our department with the Cubs, and I've seen a lot of other coaches kind of challenging this fact of like dynamic warm-ups. Do we need them? Do we need to warm up at all? People are starting to take more of like a game-based approach to warm-ups, and it's kind of opened my mind a good amount to the standard like okay, dynamic warm-up on your lower body days where you're gonna sprint and do field work. more of a ground based and extensive med ball stuff approach for your upper body days and like tempo work. But are we wasting time by doing, like a dynamic warm up that athletes probably don't super, that's not the most fun thing. It's pretty boring. Sometimes it's boring to coach too. Um, are we wasting time, and should we just try to make, because where my mind goes is like the more, and we talked about this at Elon, like you can't, with a good coach, you can't tell when the prep turns into the actual work. The more you can make the prep look like actual training, the better. But there's caveats to that too. Like, what are they coming off the day before? Some people will say, I heard on the podcast, like, if you need to do a bunch of stretching, like, probably look at your workload and what made you feel like you needed to do that much stretching. But then again, like, let's look, going back to baseball, like if you're playing games 6 days a week, like there's only so many ways you can manage that workload. I don't know. Are we wasting our time with warmups, or or should they look different? Is probably a better question.
Double-edged sword. All right, I think I got this. Yes and no.
Yep.
um, I think in like general preparedness, like expose them to as many things as possible. Especially when it's like off season, they're seeing you all the time. Like make it fun, make it engaging because it's pretty monotonous. The fact that they're like training a ton. They know that hey, Tuesdays like it's going to be a squat day or whatever it is. And it's like they come in and they're like, oh, it's going to suck. So throw in something fun, play tag, whatever kind of shit you want to do, throw a ball around just to get them warm. You can do that. And then, like, on the days where it might be like sprinting, like, obviously have them hit positions and some higher intensity activities and start to build that, prepare them to sprint. I think that's like an important piece, but you can also accomplish the same thing through some games and just slowly expanding the bandwidth of how much ground they cover and what angles they are expressing force in and going through that. Now here's where it gets a little finicky. I think on a competition or as you ramp up to like more exciting competition like towards postseason, you don't want to throw a bunch of new things that may cause problems. So familiarity is your friend. And the other thing is like when you come in, so like again, I'm gonna put this in like a track lens. Like our our practice warm-ups are very heavily like I guess like varied in that aspect of like I'm gonna have them different jumps. They're gonna do different kind of like dynamic prep movements. We're gonna do different kind of like warm-up sprints to get ready and build-ups and this and that. Their meet day prep is the same every time. There is an unwritten rule of like people are superstitious whether you want to admit it or not. They want familiarity. They want to be able to plan and execute and not have to worry. So if you take the thinking aspect out of it when shit matters most and all they have to do is execute what is given to them, boom, you've set them up for success. When you put in like thought perception or like when the athlete has to start to think about the environment, do I have enough time to do all this, do I have enough time to do this, where it's like I know 90 minutes before I got to start hitting this, at 60 minutes before, at 40 minutes before, at 20 minutes before, at 15 minutes I'm going to check it, I'm done, I got it all done, right? Stuff like that, like that's where it's like it's got to be structured, right? Because you take the thinking out of their part. Otherwise you might come into it unprepared or they might miss what they need to do to prep, so on and so forth. I think when it's a controlled environment and things are very measured around that, that's where you need to take the freedom of the prep. And it doesn't have to be super structured. It is boring to coach sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I I love sprinting. I'm not a huge fan of having to consistently coach A skips. That can get boring real quick. Um, give them a ball to kick around, play a little footy, whatever it is, kind of like to start off, get their heart rate up, get them exposed, and then you can start to hit some of the more structured stuff. Have them throw a ball at a wall. A lot of people love like Cal Dietz's like goat drill, right, where they tie the arms behind their back, they're staring at the ground in a figure eight, and they're running circles. It's a perception action coupling kind of deal, and they probably get a little more out of it. You can probably do the same thing, taking a racquetball and beaming it at the wall a little hard and trying to have to catch it on the way back out, right? Your eyes have to get intuitive to watch the environment and do something. It's okay to have fun. Like I think we always forget about that, especially as like sports become like very like business oriented. Every person who did sports started sports because they were fun. Don't lose that aspect. A happy athlete is a good athlete. Let them have fun. So I
Yeah.
think like that's like the biggest thing.
Yeah. Creating the training environment is obviously huge.
Hmm.
I agree with you on the fact that like when it comes to like game day, you just gotta like not fuck things up, and that should probably be fairly consistent.
Hmm.
But I mean, if you've built up to that variability like in the off season, that gives you more room to play with. And I think in the off season is where it really comes into play, like giving, variation, stuff like that. And if you're worried about, some people just feel better when they, stretch, whether it's actually physical or if it's more placebo psychological, like doing stretches. Like you can tell your guys, like, hey, like once we start the prep, like we're gonna move fast because we don't have much time. If you need to do any like actual stretching, because we're gonna like do that on your own, because we're gonna go right into like drill work, stuff like that. Um, or like one of the approaches that I really liked when I was at Elon. So like when I would do the preps with the men's soccer team, Revo was really good about this. Like we'd go back and forth. They would do like a soccer based drill or a small sided game for like 2 to 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes. And then I would have them for 2 to 3 minutes doing more dynamic or like drill work, stuff like that. So like you get like the game stuff and then okay, take a little break. And then sometimes he'd just be like, all right, you got a minute, do anything else you need. Like give them like some people just feel better when they do, okay, I just want to sit in a deep squat, stretch my hamstrings a little bit more. That makes them feel good. Cool. Do that. Um, yeah, it's interesting because like if you need this perfect like 15 to 20 minute prep where you do all these different stretches, like are you actually like when you get thrust into a game and you've been sitting on the bench, like and you need to be able to get up and go right now, are you kind of setting yourself up for failure there? I don't know.
Very true. Because sometimes it's like you got to go and you got to get in there now. Like, what can you hit really quick and expose them so they know like, oh, if I get this and this, I can get out there in like 3 minutes. Versus like, or just get out there right now.
Right.
Versus like, I need to hit 10 stretches of a groin rocker. I need to hit 10 stretches of a hamstring pull.
Exactly. Like get out of here. And it's tough with like baseball too. Like you could do nothing the whole game and then have to bust out a sprint from like home to second on a double. Like,
Yeah,
are you prepared to do that after you've been just swinging K'ing at the plate and like haven't gotten a ball hit your way? I don't know.
that's a, yeah.
It's a good topic, man. It's a good topic. I've been messing around with different stuff like for my warm ups, like trying to make it look either more like training. Because you have a lot of people that say like, oh, for training, like just start warming up on your first exercise.
Hmm.
And that's also super valid. For me, like upper body days have been looking like doing like wall ball, so throwing a lacrosse ball or like a plyo ball at the wall, different angles, behind the back, underhand, overhand, trying to catch it. Just do that for 5 minutes and maybe I'll play like, all right, a couple minutes and then do, all right, some scat push-ups, 10 scat push-ups. Go back to throwing the wall ball, do another, random stretch, shoulder cars, this and that. And then after 10 minutes, one, it's more stimulating. I got a sweat going. Like I've done all the things that you'd want from a warm up, and I look forward to it a lot more. And then on like lower body days, I just did shout out Dan John, just did 100 kettlebell swings nonstop with like a 50-pound kettlebell. And like you talk about ramp, you want a ramp warm up, like there you go. Raise the core body temperature, certainly. Was sweating quite profusely after that. Activate,
Yeah.
my legs were definitely activated. Mobilize, I mean, yeah, I'm working through a range of motion. Potentiate. By the time I get to rep 80, like I'm recruiting a slightly higher motor units, I would say, than I was at rep 10. So there's your ramp warm up. Then go start your squat, start your deadlift, do that. Obviously, maybe it's not that simple for most people, but like trying to make it like use that time as much as you can for actual training and just trying to get the most bang out of your buck, I think is where we're kind of both our heads are at here. Like don't waste training time
Hmm.
on stuff that's not necessary. And
Yeah.
that's kind of trial and error with a lot of stuff. So
It just takes time to figure out and dial in on what you think is, again, literally basically the title of this episode should just be what are your biggest rocks, because you take care of your biggest rocks, whether
Right.
it be in nutrition and supplementation and training. Like, take care of those big rocks, and you can vary them as much as possible to make it engaging. But as long as you get those done, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
So whether you want to make it more structured, or you want to make it more mentally and like emotionally engaging for the athlete.
Yeah. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's a good one.
Should we get some rankings and close this out?
Yeah, man. That was good shit. Um, for the old tropical edition Red Bull, dude, the can looks sick. I mean, the Red Bull can is iconic. I like the
Yeah.
yellow. The tab is great. Price point, we know it's a little bit expensive for what it provides. Less only like 86 milligrams of caffeine, but the flavor is really good. I mean, I'd hope so since it has a good amount of sugar. For that main reason, just because I'm not a huge fan of drinking calories, it's probably not going to be a daily driver for me. But based on what it is, I would probably give it, with the price, the flavor, again, not a ton of caffeine, so felt something, and I think the sugar probably helps with that a little bit. So we'll see if I crash here. I'm gonna say if I'm putting it in the realm of like with sugar energy drinks, it's really up there. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking this over like a regular full sugar Red Bull, a regular like full sugar Monster, certainly a Gridlock, stuff like that. There, it's getting like an 8.5 to a 9. Like this is
Yeah.
really good, but since it has the sugar, not a lot of
Caffeine.
caffeine, I probably got to go like a 6.3. Unfortunately, like it's not terrible. I can't just be like, oh, it's a 4 because it does taste really good,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think once in a while, like you said, like if you're gonna hit a workout and it's a little later in the afternoon, maybe this could be a go-to. But yeah, that's what I got.
For the Cadence X Raw Collaboration Core 500 watermelon mojito flavor, again, energy drinks and like hydration drinks are two separate things. This might be my highest rated hydration drink so far. Love the can, love the look. The pricing was pretty good on it, honestly. Like, I think hydration drinks tend to be like very overpriced. This wasn't terrible at like 279, especially with like current inflation standards. Flavor, phenomenal. The watermelon mojito. Like, I don't know if they have another flavor that might bang this, but like this was a perfect one to start off with. Ice cold, screaming cold can, blew my hair back. At 8.6.
That's
Eight
solid, man.
six.
That's
It's
solid.
very, very solid.
Where did you pick that up at?
Vitamin Shop.
Okay.
And I thought, like, so all they had was like the cadence showing. I was like, that's a different drink. Let me see that. And I picked it up. And when I picked it up, I was like, raw. And then I realized like Raw had like their endurance formula that they had done. I was like, maybe this is like a Raw's like new thing, and Cadence is like the product name. But Cadence does like hydration supplementation for endurance runners, which explains the name Cadence. And then they partnered up with Raw on this, and I've been wowed. I haven't had a ton of Raw products. Obviously, I've done like the Bum line, the Bum Energy, his protein, his pre-work, the Essentials pre-workout, and now this. But like, I have yet to be severely disappointed with a product from Raw. They're really climbing up there for me.
Yeah, I need to try some more of their products. I've had the protein and obviously the Bum Energy is elite.
Hmm.
So when I
The
get back, I'm
Essentials
gonna have to
pre-workout is
snag
fucking
some.
banger.
So that's sick.
But yeah.
All right. Well, as always, we really appreciate y'all for tuning in. Make sure to follow us on Instagram. So it's bevboys.tv. To see clips of upcoming episodes, past episodes that you might have missed. You can find me at French_fit40 on Instagram, training content as well as collabing with those Bev Boys posts. Brian can be found at
B Shakuski, BSZUTKOWSKI. Again, training content. I also post like some of the track stuff that we're doing. So like some of the speed, more so speed oriented kind of training, not just the weight room, but both complementary to each other, as well as our Bev Boys content. And then every single funny thing I can find on Instagram probably goes on my stories.
that's right. Sick. So make sure to tune in to next week's episode. Follow us, buy merch, support the boys, bedboys.com. Grab yourself a t-shirt, hoodie. Anything helps. Drop suggestions down below for drinks we should try, episode topics, stuff like that. We'd love to hear those. Coming up on 50 episodes here soon, so it's exciting, man. It's exciting.
50 episodes, but we need 100 subscribers. If we can get 100 subscribers by our 50th episode, we'll do a giveaway for
Yep.
for somebody.
Someone's getting a free.
Free hoodie.
That's right.
I'm gonna commit to that. I'll put my money up on it. A
Hey,
free hoodie.
me as well. So, all right, guys. Appreciate you watching. We're out. Peace.
Peace.